Can a relatively inexpensive N-scale big boy still be a good model? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi. Today I'm reviewing an N-scale big boy locomotive from Broadway Limited. My model is decorated for Union Pacific and represents 4014's modern-day appearance as an excursion locomotive. This locomotive was one of the Broadway Limited Conductors Club locomotives available in 2024. I paid $199.99 for my DCC-Ready model, plus $29.99 to join the Conductors Club for 1 year, which brings the total price to $229.98. Given that the current MSRP on BLI's website for an N-scale big boy is almost $600, albeit with smoke and factory sound, I thought this model was a pretty good deal. We'll start the model at 100 possible points. The locomotive comes in a plastic jewel-style case. A layer of flexible plastic film helps to protect the finish and details from snagging on the foam liner. There are several layers of foam. I found it easiest to remove the top one, then rotate the case to allow the model to fall into my hand. There are a couple of bags of small parts inside the box. I also found some sheets of paper in the bottom of the box with information. Even though this is the DCC-Ready Stealth version, one of the sheets has DCC information for the version that comes with factory sound. There's a URL on one of the papers that says more information is available on the Broadway website. I visited the website and found a generalized manual for Paragon 4 DCC decoder-equipped locomotives. I also found some downloadable PDF files with exploded view drawings for both the locomotive and tender. These drawings have numbers on the parts, but I wasn't able to find a parts list that cross-references the numbers. There's a small piece of foam wedged between the tender and the locomotive cab. I used a pair of needle-nose pliers to gently remove it. Harder to see is this tiny piece of foam above the front tender truck. This is a good box that should protect the model for storage and transport. Union Pacific's Big Boy 4884 articulated locomotives were built by ALCo, the American Locomotive Company, between 1941 and 1944. They were used primarily in Wyoming, hauling trains over Union Pacific's famed Sherman Hill. Big Boys lasted in revenue service until 1962. 8 of these giant locomotives have been preserved. Big Boy 4014, formerly on static display in Pomona, California, was reacquired by Union Pacific and returned to operable condition, making its debut in 2019. 4014 was originally a coal burner. When 4014 was restored to service in 2019, it was converted to an oil burner. I compared the model to photos of the real 4014 and it looks generally correct. With the black cylinder fronts and Big Boy graphic on the front of the smoke box, the model best represents 4014's appearance when it was first restored in 2019. Later photos show that the cylinder fronts have metallic covers. If you really study the model, there are a few small details that aren't quite right. Neat looking as it is, the red wheel under the cab on the engineer's side isn't present in photos I found of 4014. UP also added some sheet metal under the sand domes that isn't there on the model and wasn't there on the in-service Big Boys either. 4014 has a bulge on the front coupler cover that isn't present on the model. This stuff is very minor and especially at this small size isn't very noticeable. I doubt any of this would bother most N-scalers, so I'm not going to deduct any points. As best as I can tell, Broadway got the tender right with all of the squared off areas with doors that are present on the real 4014. Overall, I think Broadway did an excellent job capturing the look of this beautifully restored steam locomotive. The paint on the model is opaque and thin enough not to obscure any detail, and the separation lines between the black and the metallic areas are sharp. The markings are crisp and free of voids. Most of the small writing is legible with magnification. Many of the details on the model are separately applied. Most steam engines have a lot of visible plumbing, and the Big Boy model has enough not to disappoint. It captures the busy look of the real locomotive. The cab windows slide open and close, something I'm not used to seeing in N-scale. The cab has an interior, though it's hard to see since the back is enclosed. I would recommend being very careful with the cab roof, as the overhang at the rear is very thin and looks like it could be a little fragile. The hinged deck plate behind the cab actually works. I really like how the drive wheels are painted overall black without the chrome rim look so common in many N-scale steam engines. On the pilot, the model has a separately applied uncoupling lever and a nicely done UP shield. The front dummy coupler swings around just like the real thing. One of the parts bags has a coupler in it if you want to replace the front dummy coupler with a working one. In back, the tender has an uncoupling lever and a brake hose. Up top, the model has dual stacks. The other bag has a couple of parts that look like they go here. One is a cover, though I haven't found any photos of 4014 with a cover like this on it. The other is for the open stacks. The instructions mention a smoke unit, but I don't think the Stealth series models have one. It's hard to show on camera, but when I look down the stacks, I just see a big open space. In fact, if I rotate the front drive wheel assembly, I can see right through the model. I'm not that into smoke units, so I'm not bothered by this, but if you tried to put smoke fluid in this model, it would run right out the bottom and make a big mess. The top of the boiler is very nicely done with plenty of detail for N scale. The top of the tender also has a lot of detail. I managed to find an overhead shot of 4014, and it looks like all of this is correct for the engine as it was in 2019. According to the Broadway website, 6 of the drivers and most of the tender wheels are used for electrical pickup. One of the drive axles has traction tires. I didn't see an obvious way to separate the locomotive and tender. Since the box is designed to store them together, I'd recommend just leaving them connected. As I mentioned earlier, the model comes with the front dummy coupler in the hidden position. Since that's how 4014 is seen most of the time, and I expect most modelers will leave it that way, I'm not going to score the front coupler. Looking for a match in the horizontal center line, the rear coupler is at the correct height according to the microtrain's height gauge. All of the wheels on the locomotive and tender are in gauge according to the NMRA standards gauge. There are a lot of wheels on this model, so that's really good. The locomotive has no significant body wobble. Neither does the tender. The locomotive and tender weigh 8.5 ounces. Drawbar pull is impressive for N scale. My most consistent result was 2.2 ounces. At one point the force gauge shot up to 2.6, but I wasn't able to reproduce that result. Even at 2.2, that's as much as some smaller HO scale locomotives. I'm running the model on DC power. The engine starts and runs fairly smoothly. There is a slight jerkiness to the motion that starts to get noticeable to me at about 1/4 throttle. It's possible this might smooth out with time, though that doesn't always happen in my experience. A good DCC decoder might also help. As it is, though, I think this is an unfortunate flaw in an otherwise very nice model, so I'm taking 5 points. The mechanism is fairly quiet with just a little bit of gear noise. The Broadway website recommends a 9 3/4 inch minimum radius for this engine. Just for fun, I decided to try it on some Kato 216mm curves, which were an approximate 8.5 inch radius. It surprised me a little, but the locomotive stayed on the track. The overhang is severe, and I don't know that this would be practical for day-to-day operation, but it's nice to know that the engine can handle it. Broader curves would be preferable for a locomotive of this size. The front headlight comes on as the throttle is advanced when the locomotive is moving forward. The backup light on the tender comes on when the engine is moving backwards. There's also a light in the cab which comes on as voltage increases. On DCC, these lights could be controlled independently and the brightness would be constant. If you got the stealth version like I did and you want to install your own DCC decoder, you'll need to open up the tender. To do that, you'll need a very small jeweler-style Phillips head screwdriver. First, remove the rear coupler screw. Then remove the coupler, being careful of the uncoupling levers. Next, remove the 2 screws on either side of the coupler mounting area. Put the model back on its wheels and gently push the top of the fuel bunker forward. Once that's out of the way, there are 2 more screws in the metal piece at the front of the tender that need to be removed. It's the 2 on the bottom, not the 2 on the top. With these 2 screws removed, the tender body will lift off. The model has a Next 18 dummy board installed. All you need to do is remove this and install the DCC decoder of your choice with a Next 18 connector. The tender even has a speaker and enclosure pre-installed, so if you want to install a sound decoder, you don't need to do any extra work. I feel like Broadway Limited is up their game with the detail level on this model. It's kind of up there with an Athearn Genesis or something, similar. So they did a really good job with that part. The overall impression when you're looking at it is really good. I would like to see some better instructions, maybe something to go along with the exploded view drawings that you can download from the website to make it a little easier. Off camera, it took me a while to figure out how to take the tender apart. So, I didn't show that, of course. I put it back together and then did it, on camera for you guys. But, it took a while. So I was like, something that would maybe explain that would have been nice. Other than that, I think the model's a really good value with the Conductor Club price. If you figure it's about $230, including the Conductor Club membership, and I'll probably add maybe another $100 to that to put in a sound decoder. But even at that, at about $330, it's, just a little over half the price of a, sound equipped one off the Broadway website. So, that's pretty good. A lot of these steam engines are, kind of getting expensive these days. So to have something like this offered at such a low price, is really cool. And honestly, that's why I bought it, was because it was offered at such a low price. So I like having it in my N-scale collection, and it's pretty cool. So I'm going to enjoy this model and hopefully eventually run it on something, maybe the Siren Creek even, since it'll take the sharper curves. Let's see what we've got. The motion of the model is slightly jerky, so I took 5 points in the standards and operation category. That leaves us with 95 out of 100 possible points, which would be an A on our report card. I'm giving this model a green signal. This is a nice model of UP 4014. I'm sure many fans of Union Pacific or large steam locomotives in general would like to have one of these in their collection. I think Broadway Limited did a really nice job on this model. If you're looking for a big boy for your N-scale layout, then I think you might like it. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.